The Strengthening Communities podcast is brought to you by Access Services. Join us as we talk with Don and Terri Bredamus and Kristie Ainsley, a family that was formerly a part of our group homes.
So welcome, guys, to another episode of Strengthening Community Podcasts. And we're here with Mike, the co-host. And Mike, do you got your mug?
I got my mug.
All right.
And again, another podcast where I'm not decorated yet in the back. And don't think that hasn't been on my mind every day leading up to the recording. Because I held myself accountable during the last podcast, and clearly we see how effective that's been. So I need a different strategy.
Mike and I are big Ted Lasso fans, and he has a Ted Lasso wall, which came down because he had to move, and now it hasn't gone back up yet. So it will come. But here's the thing. I got my mug. I don't know if you can see it or not.
Is that the Access Services
mug? This is the old
mug?
the original. Did you guys have this? John and Terri, did you have this mug, or did it show up after you? Man. All right, well, we're going to have to find a couple more. It took me a while. It took me almost a month to find this one. So, I mean,
where did it end up? Where'd you get it? Where did you find it?
Of all places, my dad had one. And I was looking for something else in his house. He's 94. He lives next door. And I'm in his house looking for something else. And I found a mug. And I'm like, oh, look, I got a mug. Well, welcome, guys. So Mike, the co-host, is here. And then we're meeting Don and Terri Bredamus, who were house parents at our Hamilton Street group home back in the early 80s. I don't know when that house opened, but I showed up around 1982. And then Kristie, their daughter, is here with us. We're going to hear also today from some audio recordings from Tim and Katie, their other two children. But what a blast from the past. So Terri was my first supervisor here at Access Services. I rolled in all of 20 years old, having zero idea what I was doing, only knowing that I wanted to work with people. And this seemed like a good place to start. So who knew that I was going to be here, 44 years later. Yeah. After a while, they just stopped trying to get rid of me, I think. So it's so good just to be back in this conversation with you guys. And it was fun catching up, prepping for this. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you guys just tell us a little? I know what happened when I got there, but I don't even remember how you guys sort of came into that job and found that job. And so why don't you just talk a little bit about that part?
He'll tell you.
Yeah. We were looking at biblical seminary, which was in Hatfield at the time. And we had three kids under five. And we're living outside of Scranton. And we got babysitters for the kids. And we came down to the Philly area and said, Lord, if you're going to direct us to biblical seminary, you got to get us a job and a place to stay in one day. Because we only had one day to visit.
Wow. And
sure enough, when we were visiting biblical, they said, hey, have you heard of Access? And that led to us going over to Hamilton Street. And within the month, no lie, I think it was 2 weeks later.
2 weeks.
That's crazy. We moved in to Hamilton Street. By the way, we were replacing a family of three.
Three kids.
Three kids who said that they just needed more space. And I don't know what we were thinking, but yeah, we said, sure, we'll do it. Yeah.
I knew nothing about group homes. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And I was 25.
One of the things we talked about in our last podcast, Mike, was the fact that we were all so young. We just didn't know any better. We were doing a lot of really cool new things in the community, and we just didn't know any better about that. So it was innovative, but it was also a lot of fun, and a lot of life was happening all around us. Yeah.
You know, I didn't know anything about group homes, but in thinking back, I remember as a kid having someone in the neighborhood who had a sister born who had Down syndrome. I didn't know anything about Downs, but I knew that her parents put her in an institution. I was probably 9, 10 years old. And I remember thinking, I don't think I could ever do that. And I don't think my mom could have ever done that. But I didn't know what other options there were. So then all those years later, 15 or so years later, learning about a group home, oh, that's another option. But, so it was an intriguing idea to see a group home in action and then to be a part of it.
You were intrigued and then you were hooked. So And then you were in, right? Well, it's amazing how things work out. Access is glad that you had a day and you went to the right people who said, have you heard of Access? We all benefited from that.
Maybe.
No, we did. It was very, what a legacy. One of the things that we're talking about, because Access is also turning 50 this year, which is a really cool thing. So who knew that was going to happen? But here we are. So one of the things we were talking about through this series, this year in our 50th, is just sort of what kind of impact Access has been able to make in the community, in the lives of people, the people we serve, but also an impact in the community itself, impact in the people who've sort of intersected with Access in one way or another. And so you guys are just a great story about how some of that impact has sort of happened. So do you want to talk just a little bit about, what the experience was like? We were talking before we got on the air about just what it's like to have 3 small kids, be living in the place where you're also working, and then having 3 guys with intellectual disabilities that you're also just sort of taking around in the community. You're just part of the neighborhood right there. So what was that life like a little bit?
It's like expanding our family. Just, like I can still remember Katie sitting in the corner by the railing in a high chair, and us around the table with the guys, sometimes a staff member with us, sometimes not. And it was just like we grew our family by 3 people all of a sudden, and staff, which we had some great staff. So there were hard times, of course, but it was just like figuring out how to do this with the kids and the guys, and our kids enjoyed the guys,
Well, we did too.
Yeah. I think it was helpful having kids because we were out and about all the time,
right?
So we got to meet neighbors and talk to them because our kids played on the street and they were involved in all kinds of activities. And a lot of those things, the guys, 1 or 2 or 3 of them were with us. So just to help the community see these fellas as just people.
Right. And even regardless of what they might have felt about the guys, they also had to sort of see that, wait, there's a whole family with kids right there. And so on some level, it must be okay.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine, but back in the 80s, people were afraid.
And in that time period, there was a lot of ignorance, back in the early 80s.
Compared to today.
For sure. Yeah. And we had Access had opened a number of group homes all at the same time, or relatively short period of time. And this was the first time that people were seeing folks with intellectual disabilities living in the community in front of them. So oftentimes people would be either institutionalized, like you said, Terri, or they would be sort of hidden a little bit because of the stigma of it. And so we were sort of just out there in front of everybody, and that was a new thing, a new experience for everybody. It was new to us, and it was new to the system, the service system, but it was also new on a neighborhood level.
Because it's kind of like what we're talking about, like what you guys were a part of is, I don't think we magically came from a place where people were afraid or didn't understand this crowd to now where we've made a lot of progress. We didn't just happen to, upon that magically. I think it's through the work that you guys have all done to provide exposure, to get to know people. And just say, I think the fear came from the fact that a lot of our folks were not engaged in the community, whereas you guys gave people exposure to see people that they were afraid of and let them understand that these are people who have value, who are loved and cared about, and who love and care about us. So the importance of that exposure, and Mark and I talk in this podcast a lot about what it's done for us as just happening, because we happen to work in this field. But if you don't, how do you get exposure? Only through the kind of interactions that people have with the community. So that's a big part of this, and you guys provided that for people. So I think that's an important part of the story with like where we are now in terms of caring for, supporting, and understanding folks in this community because of the exposure that you guys provided.
It would have been easier to just sit home and watch TV, but we didn't do that, did we, Mark?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did all kinds of stuff.
We actually did more when we were in the group home than we did when we weren't, for our family. So.
Everybody's social life went up a little bit, right? Because we had to have people out in the community. That was one of our sort of values. We're not just in the community; we're a part of the community, and we have to get out there to do that.
I think sometimes that when I reflect to what the world was like back then to where we are today, I'm thankful we were a part of that, because I feel like we were. But sometimes I think because I thought this is how people should see these guys. I love these guys. They should too. I was too much maybe in your face sometimes. Didn't give people enough time maybe. Like, well, come on, jump on board was sort of my attitude, I think sometimes. Like, well, they should feel this way too. So just feel this way. I don't think I was always patient enough because change is so slow, And I'm just like, hey, this is how people should feel. So feel it.
Yeah, like get on with it already. Like, what's the big deal?
We've been here. Yeah. This is our second Christmas here. You should probably decorate your tree and be with us, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, let's just move along. But anyway, we had some fun times though.
I remember being in a grocery store with Brian, and we were right at the checkout, and he suddenly just grabbed a candy bar and just ate the whole thing, paper and all. And it happened so fast. I was pretty new. I hadn't prepared for that. And so I just stood there staring at him. I'm not going in there after it. And I'm like, what? Like, I don't know what to do next. And so I looked at the clerk, who was just sort of staring somewhat dumbfounded as well. Like I should know what to do. And I'm like, well, I'll gladly pay for it if you can tell me how much it is. And he paused for just a little bit. And he goes, everything on that row is $1. I'm like, okay, here's your $1. Brian, we're leaving now. So, Kristie, you're hearing all of the the stories that the grown-ups are telling. What is your impression? Like, what do you remember about that time? And when you think back on it, what's your memory or remembrance of it?
I have all positive memories of that. I mean, when you're a kid, I think you just accept what you're in as normal. So it didn't seem weird to me that we lived in a home with guys with mental disabilities. And so I just remember liking them and enjoying talking with them. I remember when we'd be upstairs. I have memories of being upstairs with them, and for some reason they had a cat, right? Spanky or something.
Spanky, yeah.
Oh yeah.
And so I liked that, going upstairs with the cat. So I have really fond memories of Tim, and I don't know. I think as a kid, I took it as normal, and so then when we weren't living in the home or even just in elementary school, especially like when kids would make fun of another kid that was maybe had some kind of disability, I remember just thinking that they were the crazy ones, like how out of touch they were with like this is a person.
Right. I'm going home to this. Right.
I lived with friends that are like this, and you just take the people that are with you as they are, and it teaches you. I think it was a wonderful experience. I've always been very grateful for it. And it teaches you how to take people where they're at and, connect with them where they can. I have really positive memories of our time there.
That's awesome. When you guys think back of just the impact that it had on John and Tim and Brian, like what do you think? What do you think the impact on them was, and what do you think the opportunity to live in the community meant for them?
I think it was definitely more impactful for John and Tim than Brian. It didn't seem like, and we had Robert first for a little while too. I forgot about Robert, yeah. But I think, John, especially being higher functioning, all those experiences really helped him learn like what he could and should say and do in public and not, and Tim too. And of course, Tim loved being out and friendly with people, and I'm sure that helped people see his humor and, because he liked engaging with people and he loved seeing cars when you were out and about. That's one of the Timisms. We still say, hey, there's your car, just like it.
I think with Brian, the greatest impact probably was on his folks.
Yeah.
They could rest secure. And Terri, whoever was the leading the home, they were the liaison, between what Brian was living and what his mom was worried about or concerned about. Especially with them, it seemed, because Brian was a little bit harder to gear as to whether he's being impacted by the environment he's living in or just oblivious to it, But for her, I just remember how heavy it was on her heart that her son would develop and, and be protected and safe, and being able to interact with Terri on a personal level and going to doctor's appointments together with Brian. And it really ministered, I think, to her, benefited her.
I went to some of those appointments with his mom, and I think
his dad.
Getting to know his mother helped me understand too why sometimes people cannot keep their kids at home. They just can't. He didn't sleep. He'd be up all night for days in a row, and he had a sister, and she just couldn't continue to do it. That helped give me some empathy that I didn't have beforehand.
It wasn't like she didn't love him.
Right.
Yeah, right. She just couldn't do that. And I think it was the same.
Right.
Yeah, same with Tim's parents. That was sort of what that was about. I was really young, and so that was an important thing for me to go through with her.
I forget what your original question was, but when we're going off on a tangent, a rabbit trail. But when you asked me, when we started talking about Brian and the effect on the community, I feel like even talking to doctors and nurses, I was able to have some kind of an impact for them to see him as a person. But trying to explain to them and to doctors how he wasn't just acting this way because he had a low IQ. There were more issues than that, helping them to see him as, like, if I presented, I'm not acting this way because I'm 60. I have something going on physically, being able to talk to them about that, which I was young and that was hard to do because, they were older,
experts, right?
But they didn't treat the guys, medical professionals didn't always treat them like people.
Yeah, right. Because they weren't used to it. Yeah. And they didn't know how to navigate that. And, there's people who don't talk or don't talk well for themselves. And it's just hard. It's oftentimes relationships build through proximity, and you need to experience a little bit. So I was also just thinking about, the impact in the neighborhood. And one of the things about Hamilton Street was that there it is, a twin right in the middle of and it's up on that hill a little bit. There was no way we were not going to be seen in that house or on the lawn or on the driveway in front of that.
The kids came over and played in our yard, and they were in our house, we were in their house, and
which was important, seriously, for those kids' development. We were there along with them, alongside them, living in this community.
Yeah, they were a wild family, so it was fine. We had the old people next door. They didn't really complain, did they?
They were great, man.
No, a very old couple.
They loved the guys.
They were fine. Yeah.
I feel like sometimes, pushing the boundaries like this, starting to push that out into the community instead of housing it up in, institutions, it just reveals what's underneath that was hidden, like the neighbor who didn't like it versus the neighbors who are like, oh yeah, it just sheds light on the things that are not so great about the way they approach people. You have an expectation of someone and they're not meeting your expectation because they have a mental difficulty or, kids are loud. I don't know. I think it's good to push people's boundaries. Yeah. So I think it's good that it was there. I think people needed to be embracing of people with differences. It needed to happen then. It still needs to happen today, that we would embrace people no matter how they're born, that we would accept them with what they have and make that connection with them. So anyway, I think it was great to be in the
I
neighborhood.
think at the same time, though, you need to be aware of where the neighborhood is. Like we could have done things that would have lessened the frustration or anxiety that they felt about us being there. Specifically, I remember parking. So we'd have staff coming and limited parking on the street. We could have been more sensitive to that, park down the street somewhere else, and to try and lessen complaints that were not related to the guys, that just were related to the functioning of the home. So anyway,
actually, that
could have been more aware.
I've never operated, I've never worked in a group home, but I've worked in direct support for many, many years. And a lot of the guys that I worked with in the community didn't give people even an opportunity to not know them. Like I had some real outgoing guys that did everybody a favor by engaging, whether you were interested or not. They were going to engage you. And then you would have, some folks like the previous neighbor who really wasn't interested in, really wasn't curious about getting to know what this population's about, or, interested in being a part of something bigger outside of your own little circle. But what I appreciate that a lot of my guys did, that it sound like, is it John, Tim, and Brian are the three?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sounds like what they did is like, I'm not going to even leave you an opportunity to not get to know me. Like I'm gonna get involved in whatever way that is. And I think that's the really important part. I think about one of my guys, and this was the first thing, Terry, when you were talking about being defensive of people, is I worked with one of my guys for about 10 years, multiple days a week. I've been connected to the family for a long time, and him and I walked into the mall, and someone came up to me. We weren't even 15 steps in, and somebody approached me, a stranger, and asked me what agency I worked for. And I said, "How dare you? This is my brother." Like without even thinking about it. And my guy, he let out the biggest laugh. he's like, "You're not my brother." They're like, "You don't know that." Let's go. But it is like that. I think it just came out because I'm just defensive about like, why, if I'm in the community with somebody, why do I have to be a staff member who's employed in a certain way? These, like my guys have, and I thought about too, as you were talking about the relief that you provided for their parents, is in all the hundreds now of homes I've been in of different people who have children receiving support. When you ask them what they're looking for their kids, almost across the board, the number one thing is, I want them to have friends. I want them to have people that care about them. I want them to be a part of the community. I want them to be meaningful to other people outside of just our family. And it requires that other people get to know them and find those things. So it's like when you provide parents that opportunity, it's not just the work you did directly with those three guys or whoever might have been in the home, but the parents of those folks who, they want them out on a Saturday night cruising chicks. Like that's what they want for them. They want that for their kids, to be meaningful in other people's lives. So that was just a thought that was occurring to me as you guys were talking, and how cool that we get to be a part of things that provide not just individuals we support the opportunity to do that, but also fulfill the needs that their parents have and the dreams that their parents have for them too.
I think about the changes, at least today, people know their attitude isn't right, and they're not going to express it as outwardly as they used to when they're not as accepting. But back in the early 80s, they were okay to just not be accepting or be critical. But I think people today, all these years later, 50 years later, they know their attitude's wrong, Yep. They may still feel it, but may not express it. But
there's a larger group of the community that just think this is cool, or engages with it, like because they are curious, as you were saying, Mike. There is some curiosity there. I was thinking about, Terry, what you were just describing, remembering the zoning hearings that we would go to, where, we would get a cease and desist order. You're not allowed to do a group home, or there's, you're zoned for a business, or you're zoned residentially, and what you're doing is a business. And so there was a lot of like structure, like that we had to work through with people. And the fact that we had house parents was really helpful, because we're saying we're just a family. The Bredamuses and their kids, and Tim, John, and Brian are a weird family, but they're a family. It's a big family.
Yeah, we lived there for 5
right.
years.
We're here. We're a family. We act like a family. We do all the things like a family, and so that was a lot of what we would say when we were in public about what we were attempting to do, was to include people in sort of an expanded family way in the community. And I remember, so I learned from you guys by doing work at Hamilton Street, and then Brendan and I met, and I got married, and I moved into a group home, at State Street, right around the corner. And I remember just doing things with the kids in the neighborhood, because that neighborhood just had a bunch of kids that were always just out on the street and doing things all the time with them.
We took the guys sledding at Whites Road Park. Well, all the neighborhood kids were sledding, and our kids were sledding, and the guys were sledding. And I don't remember Brian being a fan of the cold.
Right.
But
But that's also, like, when we talk about how do you live in a community, Whites Road Park and the hill there, that was the sledding hill. And if you lived in that portion of Lansdale, that's who you were there on. So the fact that we were there along with that, and I had the dog and the neighborhood kids who would come over and say, "Are we going sledding or what?" And so we would all go, and I would take whoever, Malcolm and John from that house, and take them up there and go sledding too. So just trying to not only just doing activities in front of people, but just being in the spaces where community life happens was really important. One of the things so we've heard a little bit from Kristie, but we also have some audio, guys. It was so cool that you just went out and asked your kids, so what do you guys think about this? We're going to be on this conversation. You guys should be a part of it. So I think what we're going to do is we're just going to listen to both of those responses, and then we'll just reflect together on them. Kristie, you can talk a little bit more too, but we'll just listen to that and just sort of reflect, because what is cool to me out of this is what's the impact, what's the ripple effect of the impact outwards, not just in the space that we're in or a time that we're in or the neighborhood that we're in, but how does the fact that people's lives are changed a little bit by that experience, what then goes on, 3 and 4 steps out. So.
Hey, Mom. Sorry this is so last minute. I know you guys have your interview today. I didn't want to forget to tell you my thoughts. I look at those years as really fun times. I didn't know any different. I just thought that the guys were part of our lives. I thought they were part of our family. And I feel like that shaped me as a person and as an educator and as a mom, as a society member. That I view everybody as part of our world, no matter what level of ability they have or what needs they have or what accommodations they may need. I think with 22 years of teaching now, I see that my perspective of the students who have special needs or accommodations or need extra help in any way, not necessarily even the students who are identified as needing help. I see them as just as productive as the other students in the class and also just as important. So I feel like that shaped me in the way that I teach and the way that I interact with people, and especially my students. I also think that it gave me a good perspective about how the rest of the world views them, because once I realized not everybody grew up in the basement of a group home, so they didn't have that experience where they were part of their lives. They some people kind of shy away from people like that, or whereas they were with us everywhere we went usually, and so they were not any different. It was just who they were. And I look at it though in the extended, not ramifications, what's the word? Effects, I guess, is the careers that you both pursued as far as education, and especially with your special education, and then Tim with special education, and Kristie with nursing, and we are all in service industry, I guess you could say. Even now, we're all serving other people, and I believe that's because of the example that you guys set, and I'm grateful for it. It set me on this trajectory of education and also service and servanthood as far as in my family and in my church and at school. And I'm really thankful for that time. I have such great memories there, and the guys are always included in those memories. It's kind of cool to see the ripple effect of that one time of our life and where it has put us all where we are now. Hopefully this helps you a little bit. Love you. Bye.
Well, Mom, thanks for asking us about this. I think some of my greatest memories are from when we lived in the group home and when you worked with the guys. I guess thinking about your questions and the way you worded things here, I guess it's kind of obvious that in that situation, it helped us see that life is not just about ourselves, and that's a good thing. You don't get it when you're a kid, but it's a good thing to see that your life is not really about you, and I think all of that helped me understand my life in Christ better. And seeing your and Dad's example of just continuing to love and to serve others. And I know it was a job, but you guys did it in a way that was warm and loving and patient. And I think I even have memories of flipping pancakes with Dad, making breakfast for the guys on Sunday morning, and then taking them to church. I think I'm remembering that correctly. Maybe an illustration of me kind of understanding that life, was to be lived, giving ourselves to others, was just, I guess, all the little inconveniences that can happen at times. But I never had, was upset about that really as a kid, maybe in the moment, but I really enjoyed being around the guys. I'm probably still most comfortable around physically and mentally handicapped people. So I think that definitely helped me care for others and want to see the best in everybody and want each person to be loved for who they were and where they were at, and to see them reach their potential. And on top of that, like Tim was just hilarious. So a lot of good times there. I know I've told the story before, but playing basketball and reaching for the ball when John had it, and then him hitting me with his forearm and elbow in the face. And me getting knocked silly, and Dad saying, well, that's what happens when you reach in. And that was a good lesson to learn, that, you mess with a bigger guy, you can get hurt. So you do need to learn those kind of things, and to respect some boundaries and some space. So all that stuff, I think. But I think mostly it was your example and your guys loving us through it and making it positive. And looking back, did not understand probably all the stress and pressure that you guys were under, you and Dad, but you handled it well, and have a lot of great memories of it. And so I'm very thankful for it. I remember being sad when we were moving from the group home. So it was great when we did get to East 5th Street, but I just remember being sad, missing those guys and leaving them. And yeah, so hope that helps. Those are just my thoughts. I've been thinking about it since you sent this message, and pretty awesome. Please tell Mark we said hi, and always looked up to him and still think a lot of him. So love you guys.
Did you hear the Southern in them?
Yeah.
Our raisin.
And, yeah, right. Yeah, you guys have been in the South for a little while now. It is really crazy. I'll just say, I was 20 at the time, and just trying to land as an adult in some way. And so, just to hear, you guys as like adults with kids and the whole thing. I mean, we've had a parallel life, our kids and grandkids now, but it's just so cool to just think about that time and the time we spent together, and just sort of see what the next generation is, how that impacted the next generation and what they're doing as a result of that. So just cool stuff.
Mark, before our kids went to school, if you worked the mornings, they would listen. And as soon as the guys left, boom, they were up the stairs to play with Mark.
Right.
You'd stick around and play
with them. Right. Because really, I was probably 12 in my head. Like that was probably it. So
you played with them. The kids felt sad when we left, but it got more complicated when they were in school and sport and dance. And when they were just all preschoolers, it was easier almost. It just got more complicated, but yes, they felt sad when we left.
Well, Tim went on to live with us, in family living for 10 years. And when that time was up, it was a similar thing. Like our girls were grown, and we weren't able to do as much for Tim because we weren't doing everything as a family. And it was mostly that we just felt that he needed more, and then he had sort of outgrown us in a way. And but when we told the girls that Uncle Tim was going to be moving, our older daughter Rachel said the same thing. Well, we just thought when you stopped taking care of Uncle Tim, we would. So it just sort of, there was those moments for us that we realized, we just by living out something in front of people, things happen that you aren't really planning on or predicting in any way. It took her about 10 minutes before she asked if she could have his room when he left. But like there was this moment, and I think it's impacted our family as well. Just having this be a natural part of who we are or who we were at the time.
As positive as all of this has been, I do remember when we were, after 5 years, going to buy our own house, and I said to Terri, if we could wait one more year, stay here in the group home just one more year, economically, it'd be so much better. And she was like, no, we got to go. And so there is a time for everything.
Yes, there is. Right. Knowing when to fold is really a pretty important thing.
I just feel, because my kids are ages 7 to 19. And I think that when you hit those middle to upper elementary years, kids they need more. And I think every year feels like more and more pressure. So another year when you're in the middle of that can feel
like I guess Tim was 10. Our Tim was 10 at that time, right?
And Don was teaching full time by then too. He taught full time for 2 years. While
I was doing overnights at Edgewood. Where was I? Overnights on the weekend.
You were a young man, Don, and had a lot of energy.
And then I got this beard because
let it go in gray over there.
I'm happy to hear how well and how much you've expanded, And
I know Rob really, really provided great leadership over all those years. Rob Reed, good people, man. Good people at the top.
We had some great staff. Some interesting staff too, but interesting, you like that word?
That could be another podcast, actually.
Yes. I remember at one point McDonald's was paying more per hour than we were. And I remember one guy came to interview with his mother. And he was asking her the questions, and she was trying to answer like the questions in a basic application. I'm like,
you hired him, right?
You can't hire someone like that.
That was Mark. It was Mark. In a twist.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I think one of the things you're bringing up is just that that what's required of this work is you have to be curious. You have to be ready to be humbled a little bit. You have to be ready to be put outside of your comfort zone some of the time. And there's just sort of, you have to, that's a certain kind of person. Not everybody's ready to do that. And particularly back then when it was a newer thing. there weren't a lot of people with a lot of experience doing that. And so we were really looking for, a few people that would be willing to do that. And it was not easy work to do.
It's about who you bring in the door, and you have to have that investment. It's required, because if you don't have that, if you have curiosity and investment, like, you don't have to know the answer to the question, what happens if somebody eats a candy bar with the wrapper on as you're standing in line? That's a situation you got to learn from in real time. Like, somebody's having a bit of a hard time on the boardwalk at a busy Friday. That's something you have to work through in the moment. And then you build those skills and flex those skills, those muscles through the repetition of caring for someone who has some needs. So
you learn how to prevent those things.
Yes. Yeah. You're like, what can we put in place that helps reduce the opportunity that this happens again? And then what you become, really, whether it's almost, I don't want to say a translator, but almost like an interpreter to other people about how this person that they're seeing is experiencing the world and experiencing them. And that's been some of the most meaningful times to me. And what I've seen with families is when we're around people that might have needs that look different, and they see you helping them either prevent a negative outcome or speaking up for them or advocating for them. And they're like, that's a guy I need on my team here. Like, that's somebody, he understands me. And I think that's the bringing in people who are curious enough to figure out how each unique individual we serve operates and moves through the world, and who cares enough to settle in. Families and people want to see us connected to their kids, and people who need things for a long period of time. They don't want somebody in the door right back out. So it's finding those people, and we have great people at Access Services. To hear these stories that happened before I came on board, even though I was still connected in the field, it's nice, and maybe we can come up with a way internally to share some of our success over 50 years with people who have been a part of that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like a reunion. Like we're all going to go down there to Virginia and see you guys, but or bring you up. Like, yeah, it has to be. We need a reunion of.
Don't make yourself a stranger, they say. Yeah. Don't make yourself a stranger.
Right. Yeah. Our goal as an organization is to impact the community around us and strengthen it. And I think for some folks, we've been sort of talking through the impact of us having been part of Access and part of providing supports to people in the community. If you're not in that realm, if you're just a person in the community listening, there's a couple things that I'm hoping you're taking away. One is that we've come a long way, baby. Like from the early 80s till now, and just in terms of how people are able to live in the community has changed a lot. And it's changed because people showed up and were supportive in communities even when that wasn't a popular thing. So the opportunities for people to be part of a community and to not only be part of it, but contribute to the wellness and the strength of a community in spite of having some disability or something that somebody might not really value as much, that has changed a lot. And then I guess the other encouragement is just when you're in your neighborhood, when you're in your community and you see somebody that looks like they could need a little help, just say hi and help out in whatever way you can. That's how we can all make our community stronger. So thank you guys so much for this conversation. This has been a trip down memory lane, and it
was a pleasure.
Yeah, always so much fun talking to you guys, and good luck down there a couple states away, and all the stuff you're still doing, and over in Italy. That's pretty cool too. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah,
it was great
fun.
to reflect back.
It was great to meet you guys and hear the stories. Fantastic.
Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. We hope that you enjoyed hearing from people who are strengthening our communities every day. Search for and follow us on your preferred streaming platform to hear future episodes.